Commander Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the mining station, watching the twin suns of Kepler 442b set over the rocky landscape. The planet was not beautiful, but it was home now. For 3 years, he had led this small colony of humans and Zentari aliens. They worked together, mined together, and lived together in peace. The mining operation was going well. Deep beneath the planet's surface, they found rare crystals that made space travel faster. The Galactic Coalition needed these crystals badly. Every day, huge machines dug deeper into the ground, pulling up tons of valuable ore. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked into the observation room. Her face looked worried. She carried a data pad in her hands, and Jake could see the concern in her eyes. "Commander, we have a problem," she said. "The geological readings are showing something strange." Jake turned away from the window. "What kind of strange?" Lisa showed him the data pad. Numbers and graphs filled the screen. "The mining equipment has been picking up movement deep underground. At first, we thought it was just shifting rock, but the patterns are too regular, too organized." "Could it be natural?" Jake asked. "No." Lisa shook her head. "This looks like something is moving down there. Something alive." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. The planet had been surveyed carefully before they built the colony. All the reports said there was no intelligent life here. The only living things were simple plants and small animals. "Have you told Elder Zefter about this?" Jake asked. Elder Zefter was the leader of the Zentari colonists. The Zentari were tall, thin aliens with blue skin and large eyes. They were peaceful beings who preferred science to war. Their technology was more advanced than human tech, but they used it for exploration and research, not fighting. "I showed him the data an hour ago," Lisa said. "He's reviewing it with his science team now." Jake nodded. "Keep monitoring the situation. If something is down there, we need to know what it is." But they found out sooner than expected. The first sign of trouble came at dawn the next day. Captain Ryan Clark, the colony security chief, rushed into the command center. His uniform was dirty, and sweat covered his face. "Commander, we have a situation at Mining Station 7, he said, breathing hard. The workers reported strange sounds coming from the deep shafts. Then the communication went dead. Jake grabbed his communicator. "Mining Station 7, this is command. Please respond." Only static came back. "Sir," one of the technicians said, "I'm picking up seismic activity near the station. Something big is moving underground." Jake made a quick decision. "Ryan, get a security team ready. We're going to investigate." "Yes, sir." 20 minutes later, Jake and his team reached Mining Station 7. The place was eerily quiet. The massive drilling equipment sat idle. Tools were scattered on the ground, as if the workers had dropped them and run. "Where is everyone?" asked Sergeant Danny Rodriguez, one of the security team members. "Spread out and search," Jake ordered. "Stay in contact at all times." They found the first body near the main shaft. It was a human miner named Pete Collins. But what they saw made everyone step back in horror. Pete's body was partially dissolved, as if something had been eating him from the inside. "What could do this?" Ryan whispered. Before anyone could answer, a terrible sound came from the deep mining shaft. It was like metal being torn apart, mixed with an animal roar. The sound echoed up from the darkness below. Everyone back to the vehicles. "Now," Jake ordered Dot as they ran. More sounds came from other shafts around the mining station. Whatever was down there was not alone. There were many of them, and they were coming up. The team made it back to the colony just as the first creature emerged from the ground. Jake watched through binoculars as something climbed out of Mining Station 7's main shaft. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature was the size of a small vehicle, with a body that seemed to be part machine and part living flesh. Metal plates covered its back, but underneath, Jake could see muscle and tissue. It had, too, many legs, each ending in sharp claws that could tear through steel. Its head was a nightmare of teeth and sensors, with glowing red eyes that seemed to see everything. Dear God, Ryan breathed. What is that thing? Elder Zifter appeared beside them, his blue face pale with fear. Those are HFY, he said, in a shaking voice. They are supposed to be extinct. They died out thousands of years ago. Well, they're not extinct now, Jake said grimly. More creatures emerged from different mining shafts around the colony. They moved with purpose, not like wild animals, but like soldiers following a plan. The HFY spread out, surrounding the colony's central compound. How many are there? Jake asked. The sensors show at least 50 so far, a technician reported. But more are coming up from the deep tunnels. Jake realized the horrible truth. The mining operation had not just found crystals. They had found something that had been sleeping deep underground for centuries. Something that should have stayed. Buried. All security teams to defensive positions, Jake ordered. Activate the colony's shields. Get all civilians to the central bunker. The Centauri had good defensive technology. Energy shields surrounded the colony, and automated weapon systems were built into the walls. But as Jake watched the creatures study their defenses, he wondered if it would be enough. The first attack came an hour later. The HFY moved fast, faster than anything that size should be able to move. They threw themselves against the energy shields, testing for weak points. When the automated weapons fired, some creatures fell, but others seemed to learn from watching. Their companions die. They're adapting, Elder Zefter said with growing horror. The HFY can change their biology to overcome defenses. That's why they were so dangerous long ago. The battle went on for hours. The creatures kept coming, wave after wave. For every HFY they killed, 2 more climbed out of the mining shafts. The colony's weapons were running low on power, and the shields were weakening. Sir? Captain? Clark reported, we're down to 30% shield strength. We can't hold them much longer. Jake knew they were in serious trouble. The colony had never been built to fight a war. It was designed for mining, not for defending against an army of monsters. Send a distress signal to the Galactic Coalition, Jake ordered. Tell them we need immediate military backup. Priority 1 emergency. The communications officer worked quickly. Signal sent, sir. Coalition Command acknowledges receipt. How long until help arrives? Jake asked. Coalition forces are 48. Hours away at best, came the reply. Jake looked at the tactical display. The HFY had almost surrounded them completely. The shields were failing, and they were running out of ammunition. 48 hours might as well be 48 years. We need to prepare for the worst, he told his officers. If the shields fail, we fall back to the inner compound. Make every shot count. As night fell over Kepler 442b, the colony prepared for what might be their final stand. The HFY gathered in the darkness, their red eyes glowing like stars. They had found prey after sleeping for centuries, and they were hungry. Jake Morrison stood at his command post, watching the monsters circle his home. Help was coming, but he wondered if anyone would be left alive to save when it finally arrived. 36 hours had passed since the distress call. The colony's shields were down to 15% power. Bodies of both humans and Centauri lay in the medical bay, victims of the creature's acid attacks. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked without rest, trying to save the wounded, but supplies were running low. Commander Jake Morrison had not slept in 2 days. He stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as red dots showed hundreds of HFY surrounding the colony. The creatures were patient now, waiting for the shields to fail completely. Sir, the communications officer called out. I'm picking up ships dropping out of hyperspace. Jake felt hope rise in his chest. Coalition forces? Checking now, sir. The officer worked at his console. Sir, these aren't Coalition ships. The signatures are ... human. Jake frowned. Human? What human ships would be out here? Elder Zefter walked over to the display screen. His blue face showed confusion. We requested Coalition peacekeepers. Why would human military vessels respond? On the main screen, the image cleared to show massive warships entering orbit around the planet. These were not the smooth, elegant vessels of the Galactic Coalition. These ships were built for war. They had thick armor, huge weapons, and looked like they could ram through a planet if needed. This is Colonel Alex Stone of the Terran Defense Force ship Vengeance. A voice crackled over the radio. We received your distress call. What's your situation down there? Jake stepped forward. This is Commander Morrison. We're under attack by hostile alien creatures. Our shields are failing, and we need immediate evacuation. Negative on evacuation, Commander. We're here to solve your problem, not run from it. Elder Zefter grabbed the communication device. Colonel Stone, this is Elder Zefter of the Zentari. Council, we specifically requested Coalition peacekeepers. Your services are not required. There was a pause. Then Colonel Stone's voice came back, colder than before. Elder, you called for backup against an extinction-level threat. We're what? Backup looks like when the talking is over. Jake had heard stories about the Terran Defense Force. They were humans who had chosen not to join the peaceful Galactic Coalition. Instead, they formed their own military organization that handled the problems other species were too civilized to solve. Colonel, Jake said, we have hundreds of creatures surrounding our position. They're called Vex-High, and they adapt to our weapons. We know about the Vex-High, came the reply. We've been hunting them for years. Sit tight, Commander. We'll have you cleared in a few hours. Elder Zefter's large eyes showed fear. Commander Morrison, you must stop them. Human military forces are known for their ... excessive methods. They solve problems with violence first. Right now, violence might be exactly what we need, Jake replied. The first human dropships broke through the atmosphere like falling meteors. They were black, angular craft that screamed down toward the planet's surface. The Vex-High noticed. Them too, turning their attention from the colony to the new arrivals. The dropships landed hard in the rocky terrain outside the colony. Ramps dropped, and human soldiers poured out. These were not the polite, diplomatic humans who worked in Coalition offices. These were warriors from humanity's homeworld, where survival meant being meaner than everything else. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan led the first engineering team. She was a small woman with short red hair and explosives strapped to her armor. Her team immediately began setting up equipment around the colony's perimeter. What are they doing? Elder Zefter asked, watching the humans work. Preparing the battlefield, Jake answered, though he was not sure exactly what that meant. Sergeant Danny Rodriguez commanded a squad of Marines who moved like predators. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that looked designed to destroy rather than disable. The Marines took positions around the colony, but they were not just defending, they were hunting. All civilian personnel to the central bunker, came a broadcast from the human forces. Combat operations will begin in 10 minutes. Dr. Hayes looked worried. Jake, what have we gotten ourselves into? Before Jake could answer, the first explosions shook the ground. Lieutenant Sullivan's team had planted charges in the mining shafts, collapsing some of the tunnels to stop more Vex-High from emerging. The sound was deafening, and dust filled the air. They're sealing the tunnels, Elder Zefter said in horror. Those are important mining sites. The environmental damage will be enormous. Better than being eaten, Jake replied. The human ships in orbit, began targeting the surface. But instead of precise strikes, they used massive bombardment weapons that turned entire sections of the landscape into glass. The HFY caught in the open were vaporized instantly. "This is barbaric," Elder Zephyr whispered. "Coalition forces would never use such methods." "Coalition forces would negotiate," Jake said, watching the destruction. "These humans came here to kill." Colonel Stone's voice came over the radio again. "Morrison, we're detecting a main hive about 2 kilometers from your position. We're going to flush them out." "How?" Jake asked. "Fire." Lieutenant Sullivan's team had been busy. They had placed fuel bombs throughout the forest where the HFY were hiding. Now they triggered them all at once. The entire forest erupted in flames, turning the landscape into a burning hell. The HFY came pouring out of the flames, their adaptive biology unable to handle the intense heat. As they ran, Sergeant Rodriguez's Marines were waiting. The humans did not just shoot the creatures. They hunted them with a precision that was terrifying to watch. "They're enjoying this," Dr. Hayes said, her voice shaking. Jake looked at the human soldiers through the observation window. She was right. The Marines were not just following orders. They were having fun. These humans had found an enemy they could fight without holding back, and they were savoring every moment. The battle lasted only 3 hours. When it was over, the HFY were not just defeated. They were extinct on this planet. The humans had killed every single one, then gone back to make sure nothing was left alive in the tunnels. Colonel Stone's shuttle landed in the colony's main courtyard. The man who stepped out was tall and scarred, with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He moved like a soldier who had seen too many battles. "Commander Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "Sorry we took so long. We had to make sure we got them all." Jake shook the colonel's hand. "Thank you for saving us." "Just doing our job." Stone looked around at the colony. "You've got good people here. They held out longer than most." "Elder." Zephyr approached them, his blue face showing disgust. "Colonel, your methods were unnecessarily brutal. Those creatures could have been studied, perhaps even communicated with." Stone turned to look at the Zentari elder. His expression did not change, but something cold entered his eyes. "Elder, those things eat living beings from the inside out. They adapt to overcome any defense. They exist only to consume and spread." "What exactly did you want to talk to them about?" "There are always alternatives to violence," Elder Zephyr insisted. "Are there?" Stone asked. "How many of your people died while you were looking for alternatives?" The elder had no answer for that. Lieutenant Sullivan walked up to the group. Her armor was blackened from the explosions, but she looked satisfied. "All tunnels are sealed, sir. No more nasties coming up from below." "Good work, Lieutenant." Stone turned back to Jake. "Commander, we're going to leave a monitoring station here. If anything else crawls out of the ground, we'll know about it." "What about the mining operation?" Jake asked. "You can restart it. In a few months. The ground needs time to cool down first." Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Colonel, your soldiers. They seemed to enjoy the fighting." Stone nodded. "They did. These are good people, Doctor, but they come from a world where everything tried to kill them. Fighting is what they do best." "That's what worries me," she replied quietly. Stone heard her. "Doctor, there are monsters in this galaxy that would eat your children and use their bones to pick their teeth. When those monsters show up, you don't want negotiators. You want us." "Elder." Zephyr shook his head. "There must be a better way than this constant violence." "Maybe," Stone said. "But until you find it, we'll keep doing what we do. We'll be the monsters, so you don't have to be." As the human soldiers prepared to leave, Jake realized something important had changed. The galaxy had sent them polite, civilized help, but what arrived were the real warriors. the ones who did not ask questions or look for peaceful solutions. They were the ones who simply killed the monsters and moved on to the next fight. And Jake was beginning to understand why. The rest of the galaxy both needed them and feared them at the same time. The human soldiers did not leave after the first battle. Colonel Stone announced they would stay until the threat was completely eliminated. This news worried Elder Zephyr more than the original Vex-High attack. Commander Morrison, the Elder, sighed, "These humans are changing our colony into a military base. Look what they're doing to our buildings." Jake looked out the window at Lieutenant Sullivan's engineering teams. They were welding metal plates over windows, setting up weapon positions, and installing automated guns on the rooftops. The peaceful mining colony was becoming a fortress. "They're protecting us," Jake said. "Are they?" Elder Zephyr asked. "Or are they turning us into something we never wanted to be?" Jake did not have an answer. The humans worked with frightening efficiency. In just 2 days, they had transformed the colony's infrastructure. What used to be a research laboratory was now a command bunker. The recreational center became an armory. Even the medical bay had been reinforced with blast doors. Sergeant Rodriguez walked through the colony with his Marines, marking buildings with spray paint. Red marks meant defensive position. Yellow marks meant fallback point. Black marks meant expendable. "What does that mean?" Dr. Hayes asked, pointing to a black mark on the community center. "It means if we need to blow something up to stop the enemy, that building goes first," Rodriguez explained calmly. Dr. Hayes looked shocked. "But that's where the children play." "Not anymore," Rodriguez said. "Kids don't play in war zones." The cultural differences became more obvious each day. The Zentari believed in preservation and careful planning. They wanted to study the Vex-High to understand them better. The humans believed in elimination and decisive action. They wanted to make sure the Vex-High could never threaten anyone again. Lieutenant Commander Paul Bennett arrived with the second wave of human reinforcements. He was the Terran Defense Forces expert on hostile alien biology. Unlike coalition scientists who studied aliens to learn about them, Bennett studied them to find better ways to kill them. "Commander Morrison," Bennett said, "I need to examine the Vex-High remains. We've fought these things before, but they evolve differently on each planet." "Dr. Hayes can show you to the bodies," Jake offered. Bennett smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "I don't need to see the bodies. I need to see the live ones." "Live ones?" Dr. Hayes asked. "We thought they were all dead." "We killed the active ones," Bennett corrected. "But there are always dormant forms deep underground. They're probably already adapting to our weapons." Elder Zephyr stepped forward. "You cannot simply destroy everything. These creatures might be the last of their species. They have a right to exist." Bennett stared at the alien elder. "They have a right to exist somewhere else. Not here, where they can eat human children." "All life has value," Elder Zephyr insisted. "Not all life," Bennett replied coldly. "Some life exists only to destroy other life. That kind of life needs to be stopped." The philosophical differences created tension throughout the colony. The Zentari wanted to establish communication with any surviving Vex-High. The humans wanted to hunt them down and exterminate them completely. "They're poisoning the water supply," Elder Zephyr complained to Jake. "The humans are putting chemicals in the underground streams to kill anything that might be living there." Jake found Lieutenant Sullivan at the water treatment facility. She was indeed adding substances to the water system, but she explained it differently. "It's not poison," she said. "It's a biological agent that breaks down Vex-High tissue. If any of them try to use the water, they'll dissolve." "But what about other life forms?" Jake asked. "What about them?" Sullivan responded. "This planet has 2 types of life now: human life and enemy life. We're making sure the enemy life doesn't survive. The human approach was brutally simple. They divided everything into two categories: things that helped humans and things that threatened humans. Everything in the second category was targeted for destruction. Dr. Hayes found herself working with Bennett to study the HFY biology. But while she wanted to understand how the creatures lived, he only cared about how they died. "Look at this," Bennett said, pointing to a tissue sample under the microscope. "The HFY can rebuild their cellular structure in hours. They're basically immortal. That's amazing," Dr. Hayes breathed. "Think of the medical applications." "I am thinking of them," Bennett replied. "I'm thinking about how to make sure they can't use this ability against us." Bennett's research was disturbing. He was not just studying the HFY. He was creating new weapons specifically designed to kill them. Chemical compounds that would prevent their adaptation. Viruses that would attack their unique biology. Radiation that would destroy their cellular structure. "This is genocide," Dr. Hayes said quietly. "No," Bennett corrected. "Genocide is what the HFY do to other species. This is pest control." The Zentari tried to appeal to the Galactic Coalition, but the response surprised them. The Coalition supported the human actions completely. "The Terran Defense Force has full authority to handle extinction-level threats," came the official reply. "Their methods are approved for this situation." Elder Zefter was shocked. "The Coalition is supposed to protect all life forms." "They protect life forms that don't eat other life forms," Jake explained. "The HFY lost their protection when they started killing colonists." As the days passed, the humans continued their systematic destruction of anything that might harbor HFY. They collapsed cave systems, burned forests, and sterilized water sources. The planet's ecosystem was being permanently altered. "They're turning this world into a wasteland," Elder Zefter said sadly. "They're turning it into a safe place for humans to live," Jake replied. "Sometimes those are the same thing." The Zentari began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had asked for backup, expecting to receive help from civilized beings who would solve their problem with minimal damage. Instead, they had summoned something far more dangerous than the original threat. The humans were not just soldiers. They were the product of a world where survival meant being more violent than everything else. They did not fight to win. They fought to make sure the enemy could never fight again. Captain Clark approached Jake with a disturbing report. "Sir, I've been monitoring the human communications. They're planning something big." "What kind of something?" "They're going to destroy the entire underground cave system. Every tunnel, every chamber, every possible hiding place." Jake felt a chill. "That will destabilize the entire geological structure of this area." "Yes, sir. The humans don't care. They want to make sure nothing can ever live underground on this planet again." That evening, Jake confronted Colonel Stone about the plan. "Colonel, destroying the cave system will cause massive environmental damage. The mining operation will be impossible to restart." Stone nodded. "That's the price of security, Commander. You can't mine safely if monsters are living in the tunnels." "But this is our home," Jake protested. "And we're making sure it stays your home," Stone replied. "The only way to guarantee that is to eliminate every possible threat." Elder Zefter made one last attempt to reason with the humans. "Colonel Stone, surely there must be a way to coexist with the HFY. They are an ancient species. They have as much right to this planet as we do." Stone studied the alien elder for a long moment. "Elder, let me explain something about human philosophy. We believe that rights come with responsibilities. The HFY have the right to exist, but they also have the responsibility not to eat other intelligent species. They failed that responsibility. Now they lose their rights." "That's a very harsh view of the universe," Elder Zefter said. "It's a view that keeps humans alive," Stone replied. And now it's keeping you alive, too. The next morning, the humans began their final operation. Massive drilling equipment, brought down from their ships, began boring new holes deep into the planet's core. They were not mining. They were placing the largest explosives Jake had ever seen. "How big will the explosion be?" he asked Lieutenant Sullivan. "Big enough to crack the planet's crust in this region," she said cheerfully. "Nothing will survive underground, not even bacteria." Jake realized that the humans had not come to solve their problem. They had come to eliminate it so completely that it could never happen again. They were not just killing the monsters. They were killing the possibility of monsters. As the final preparations were made, Jake wondered if they had traded one nightmare for another. The HFY were gone, but in their place was something that might be even more frightening. The humans were not evil. They were simply so good at solving problems that they destroyed everything related to the problem. They did not just win battles. They made sure the enemy could never fight again. And Jake was beginning to understand why the rest of the galaxy both needed them and was terrified of them. The ground shook as the massive drilling equipment finished its work. Lieutenant Sullivan's team had placed explosives throughout the underground cave system. But before they could detonate them, the planet's crust began to crack on its own. "Sir," Captain Clark reported, "we're getting seismic readings like nothing I've ever seen. Something big is moving down there." Commander Jake Morrison looked at the tactical display. The sensors showed movement in tunnels they had never known existed. Deep beneath the planet's surface, something ancient was waking up. "How many?" Jake asked. "Thousands," came the reply. "Maybe tens of thousands." Colonel Stone's voice crackled over the radio. "All human forces to battle stations. This is what we came for." The first wave of HFY erupted from the ground like water from a broken dam. These were not the small creatures they had fought before. These were the original forms, the ones that had been sleeping for centuries. They were massive, each one, the size of a building, with armor that seemed to absorb energy weapons. Elder Zifter watched in horror as the monsters emerged. "There are so many of them. How did they hide from our sensors?" "They didn't hide," Lieutenant Commander Bennett said calmly. "They were dormant. Our attack woke them up." The Centauri defensive systems, which had held back the smaller HFY for days, lasted only minutes against this new assault. The energy shields sparked and died as the creatures tore through them. The automated weapons fired continuously, but seemed to have no effect on the giants. "Fall back to the inner compound," Elder Zefter ordered his people. "We cannot fight these things." But the humans did not retreat. As the Centauri ran for shelter, the human Marines advanced toward the enemy. They moved with a precision that was beautiful and terrifying to watch. Sergeant Rodriguez led his squad directly into the swarm of creatures. His men carried weapons that Jake had never seen before. They did not just shoot at the HFY. They hunted them. "Rodriguez," Jake called over the radio, "you're outnumbered 100-1. Pull back." "Negative, sir," came the reply. "We're right where we want to be." The Marines worked together like a pack of wolves. They used the creatures' size against them, darting between their legs and placing explosives on their joints. When a HFY fell, the humans swarmed over it, finding weak points in its armor. Lieutenant Sullivan's engineering teams had prepared for this moment. Throughout the colony, hidden weapons activated. These were not the precise, careful weapons of the Coalition. These were designed to kill everything in their target area. Flamethrowers erupted from concealed positions, turning entire sections of the battlefield into burning hell. The HFY, for all their adaptation abilities, could not overcome the simple physics of fire hot enough to melt steel. "They're using the buildings as weapons," Dr. Hayes said in amazement. She was right. The humans had turned the entire colony into a giant trap. Every building, every street, every open space had been prepared for this battle. The HFY were not just fighting soldiers. They were fighting the environment itself. Colonel Stone coordinated the battle from the command center. His voice was calm and professional as he directed the destruction. Sullivan, trigger the eastern grid. Rodriguez, herd them toward the fuel depot. Bennett, release the biological agents now. Jake watched the battle unfold and realized something disturbing. The humans were not just fighting efficiently. They were enjoying themselves. This was not a desperate struggle for survival. This was what they did for fun. Look at them, Dr. Hayes whispered. They're smiling. She was right. The human soldiers were actually smiling as they fought. They moved through the battlefield like they were playing a game, competing to see who could kill more monsters. The HFY began to retreat for the first time in their species' history. These creatures, which had conquered entire star systems, were running from a handful of human soldiers. Why are they retreating? Elder Zephyr asked. Because they've never fought anything like this before, Jake replied. They're used to being the scariest thing on the battlefield. Bennett's biological weapons were taking effect. The creatures that had adapted to energy weapons and explosives could not adapt to engineered viruses designed specifically to destroy their cellular structure. The HFY were dissolving from the inside out. This is impossible, Elder Zephyr said. Nothing can create biological weapons that fast. We didn't create them that fast, Bennett replied over the radio. We've been preparing for this fight for years. We know about every dangerous species in the galaxy, and we have weapons ready for all of them. The truth was becoming clear. The humans had not come to help the colony. They had come to test their weapons against an enemy they had been hunting for a long time. The colonists were not being rescued. They were being used as bait. You knew this would happen, Jake said to Colonel Stone. You knew the big ones were down there. We suspected, Stone admitted. The small ones are just scouts. The real threat was always the deep dwellers. We had to wake them up to kill them. You used us, Jake said angrily. We saved you, Stone corrected. If we hadn't come, those things would have eaten every living being on this planet. Now they're extinct. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The humans had planned for this fight down to the smallest detail. Every weapon, every tactic, every position had been chosen specifically to destroy the Vexa AI.as. The sun set, the last of the creatures fell. The battlefield was covered with the dissolved remains of monsters that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. The humans had not just defeated them, they had erased them from existence. All clear, Sergeant Rodriguez reported. No movement on any sensors. The threat is eliminated. Jake looked at the destruction around him. The colony was damaged, but intact. The HFY were gone forever. The humans had done exactly what they promised to do, but he was beginning to understand. The true cost of their help. Captain Clark approached him with a report. Sir, I've been monitoring the human communications during the battle. They were recording everything. Recording? Combat data, weapon effectiveness, enemy behavioral patterns. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a field test. Jake felt sick. They were studying us too. Yes, sir. How we fight, how we react under pressure, how we work with alien allies. All of it went into their database. Dr. Hayes joined them, her face pale. Jake, I've been talking to Bennett about the biological weapons. He says they have similar agents designed for every known species in the galaxy, including humans? Jake asked. Including humans, she confirmed quietly. The implications were terrifying. The humans had not just come to fight monsters. They had come to study everything about the situation. They were learning how to fight the HFY, how to fight alongside other species, and how to fight those species if necessary. Elder Zephyr approached them, his large eyes filled with a new kind of fear. "Commander Morrison, we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "The humans have shown us what they're capable of. They've shown us that they have weapons we cannot defend against. They've shown us that they see everything as either an ally or a threat." Jake understood what the Elder was saying. The humans had not just eliminated the Vexi. They had demonstrated their complete dominance over any threat they chose to face. "What are you going to tell the Coalition?" Jake asked Elder Zephyr. "The truth," the Elder replied. "That we asked for backup against monsters, and what arrived were bigger monsters." Colonel Stone walked over to their group. His armor was clean despite the battle, and he looked completely relaxed. "Gentlemen, the operation was a complete success. The Vexi threat is permanently eliminated." "At what cost?" Elder Zephyr asked. "No human casualties, minimal infrastructure damage, zero possibility of threat recurrence. I'd call that a perfect score." Jake stared at the Colonel. "You're talking about genocide like it's a math problem." "It is a math problem," Stone replied. "The equation was simple. Them or you. We made sure the answer was you." Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Colonel, your soldiers were enjoying the killing." "That's not normal behavior." Stone's expression grew colder. "Doctor, my soldiers come from a world where everything tried to kill them. Every day for millions of years. Fighting is not just what they do. It's what they are. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why you're more worried about our psychology than grateful for your life." The truth hit Jake like a physical blow. The humans were not pretending to be monsters for tactical advantage. This was their natural state. They had evolved on a planet so dangerous that only the most violent survivors could live long enough to reproduce. "How many species have you eliminated?" Elder Zephyr asked quietly. "Hostile species?" 47 confirmed extinctions," Stone answered without hesitation. "Potentially hostile species?" "Another dozen or so that we decided not to take chances with." "That's mass murder," Dr. Hayes whispered. "That's pest control," Stone corrected. "We remove threats to human survival. It's what we do." As the human soldiers began packing their equipment, Jake realized that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had invited humans into their community, thinking they could be civilized. But humans could not be civilized. They could only pretend to be civilized when it served their purposes. "Colonel," Jake said, "what happens if humanity decides that enough?" 3 days after the battle, the cleanup was complete. The Vexi were not just dead. They were erased. Every tunnel had been collapsed. Every nest had been sterilized. Every trace of their existence had been removed from the planet. "Commander." Jake Morrison stood in what used to be the colony's community center. Now it was a military command post filled with human equipment. The transformation was complete. The peaceful mining colony was now a fortress. "The monitoring station is fully operational," Lieutenant Sullivan reported to Colonel Stone. "If anything bigger than a bacteria moves underground, we'll know about it." "Good," Stone replied. "We'll leave a garrison here for 6 months to make sure nothing we missed crawls out of the rocks." Elder Zephyr approached them. His blue face looked older somehow, as if the past few days had aged him years. "Colonel, when will your people leave our colony?" "This isn't your colony anymore," Stone said simply. "It's a Terran Defense Force outpost now. You're welcome to stay, but you'll follow our rules." The words hit like a physical blow. Jake stepped forward. "Colonel, this is still our home." "No, Commander. This is a strategic location that we've secured against future threats. Your people can continue mining operations under our protection, but ultimate authority belongs to the TDF." Dr. Hayes looked shocked. "You're occupying us." "We're protecting you," Stone corrected. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Jake asked angrily. Protection keeps you alive. Occupation would have you dead or enslaved. Which would you prefer? Elder Zefter's large eyes filled with understanding and fear. You planned this from the beginning. The Vex-High attack was just an excuse to establish a military base in Coalition space. Stone did not deny it. The Vex-High attack was a real threat that required elimination. Establishing a base here ensures it won't happen again. 2 problems. 1 solution. Jake felt betrayed, but he also felt something else. Relief. The humans had saved them, and they would continue to protect them. The price was their independence, but the alternative had been death. What about the Galactic Coalition? Elder Zefter asked. They won't accept human occupation of a coalition world. Stone smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The coalition specifically requested our intervention. They gave us full authority to handle the situation as we saw fit. This is how we see fit. Lieutenant Commander Bennett approached with a datapad. Colonel, the biological survey is complete. No traces of Vex-High genetic material remain on the T. Planet. The species is extinct. Confirmed extinct, Stone said. Mark it in the database. That's 48 down. Jake felt a chill. 48 species? 48 hostile species that no longer threaten human colonies, Bennett clarified. We're very good at our job. Dr. Hayes stared at the human soldiers. How can you be so casual about genocide? It's not genocide, Bennett replied. Genocide is what happens to intelligent species. The Vex-High were just very sophisticated predators. You don't negotiate with cancer. You eliminate it. The philosophical difference was clear. Humans did not see hostile aliens as equals to be reasoned with. They saw them as problems to be solved permanently. Elder Zefter made one last attempt. At diplomacy, surely the coalition can find a compromise. Some way for all species to coexist peacefully. The coalition tried peaceful coexistence for 300 years, Stone said. How many colonies were lost to hostile species during that time? How many billions died while diplomats talked about finding middle ground? The Elder had no answer. We're not interested in coexistence with species that see us as food, Stone continued. We're interested in making sure those species don't exist anymore. Captain Clark approached Jake with a communication device. Sir, we're receiving a message from Coalition Command. Jake took the device. This is Commander Morrison. Commander, this is Admiral Chun of the Coalition Defense Council. We've received Elder Zefter's report about the situation on Kepler 442b. Jake glanced at Elder Zefter, who looked uncomfortable. What kind of report, Admiral? A complaint about excessive force and unauthorized occupation by human military units. Stone took the communication device from Jake. Admiral, this is Colonel Stone. The situation has been resolved according to TDF protocols. The threat is eliminated, and the colony is secure. Colonel, the Coalition appreciates your assistance, but we need to discuss your continued presence on Coalition territory. Admiral, with respect, this is no longer Coalition territory. This is a secured human outpost. We're willing to allow Coalition civilians to remain under our protection, but sovereignty has transferred to the Terran Defense Force. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Chun's voice returned, but it sounded different. Less official, more. Resigned. Understood, Colonel. The Coalition recognizes your claim. Elder Zefter looked shocked. Admiral, you cannot simply abandon us to human occupation. Elder Zefter, the Admiral said quietly, the Coalition requested human military intervention. We gave them full authority to resolve the crisis. This is the result of that decision. But this sets a terrible precedent, the Elder protested. Elder, the Admiral replied, the precedent was set when we invited humans into the galaxy. We thought we could control them, use them as our military arm while keeping them politically subordinate. We were wrong. The communication ended, leaving. Then, in silence, Jake realized the truth. The Galactic Coalition had not been managing humanity. Humanity had been managing the Coalition. Every diplomatic gesture, every peaceful cultural exchange, every act of cooperation had been preparation for this moment. "How long have you been planning this?" Jake asked Stone. "Since the day we joined the Coalition," Stone replied honestly. "We knew eventually there would be a crisis that required our intervention. We knew that when that happened, we would be in a position to dictate terms." Dr. Hayes looked around at the human soldiers, who were setting up permanent installations. "What happens to species that resist human authority?" "They become problems that need solving," Stone said simply. "And if the Coalition tries to remove you by force?" Stone's expression grew cold. "Admiral, you really don't want to find out what happens when humans stop pretending to be civilized." That evening, Jake stood on the observation deck, looking out at his transformed home. Human patrol ships moved through the sky. Human soldiers walked the streets. Human weapons pointed outward from every building. Dr. Hayes joined him. "Are we prisoners or protectees?" "I don't think there's a difference anymore," Jake replied. "Do you think they'll really protect us?" Jake thought about the battle, about how efficiently the humans had eliminated an impossible threat. "Yes, they'll protect us from everything except them." Elder Zephyr approached them, his blue face sad. "Commander Morrison, I must ask you something important." "What is it, Elder?" "Your people. Are they all like this?" Jake looked out at the human soldiers, remembering Colonel Stone's earlier words. "No, Elder. These are the ones they send when they want something to stay dead. You really don't want to meet the ones they keep at home." The Elder shuddered. "What have we brought into our galaxy?" "The apex predators," Jake answered. "We thought we were inviting humans to join our civilization. Instead, we were asking permission to exist in theirs." As the stars came out over Kepler 442b, Jake understood that everything had changed. The galaxy had asked for backup against monsters, and humanity had responded by showing them what real monsters looked like. The terrifying part was not that humans were monsters. The terrifying part was that they were monsters who had decided the other species were worth protecting, for now. And everyone in the galaxy should be grateful that humans were on their side, because the alternative was extinction. The age of peaceful coexistence was over. The age of human protection had begun, whether the galaxy wanted it or not.